Question 1. What is your position at American University and what are your responsibilities?
My name is Pat Aufderheide, and I'm a professor at American University in our School of Communication. And I teach about film and about communication policy and some about internet policy. And I also research about those questions. I look at the future of the evolution of documentary, and I analyze how creative practice changes depending on what you think your copyright rights are.
We have researched and have seen that you won the Women of Vision Award from Women in Film and Video in 2010. What led to this recognition?
That's a great question. When you get one of those Life Achievement Awards, it's never clear to you exactly why they chose you. And my personal belief is that if you live long enough, you'll probably get one. But I think that the reason that the filmmakers believe that my work has been so important to them is because of my work on copyright. When I did my research on fair use practices in documentarians, it really changed what they were able to do. Now, fair use is the right to be able to use copyrighted material without licensing it, without paying for it or even asking permission. And you can't do that with all copyrighted material, and you can't do it in all circumstances. The way that you can do that is if you are using it for some new purpose. And I'll give you a simple example. What's a great popular song that you really like?
Take Me to Church by Hosier.
Okay, so Take Me to Church, and what kind of music is that?
Pop.
Okay, so say you want to download Take Me to Church and not pay for it, and then put it up on your Facebook page because you want to share it with all your friends because you just love Take Me to Church. That would be infringing copyright because you would be using other people's material in the original market for which it was designed, for which it is being sold, and not paying for it. So that's an infringement of their copyright. But say you want to say, Take Me to Church is really different from the last popular song that this guy wrote. And it's different in these ways. Let me play you a little bit of the refrain from this last song, and let me play you a refrain from Take Me to Church. Or you want to say, Take Me to Church is just really so derivative of this other song. Now listen to the original, now listen to Take Me to Church. Really, look at how close they are. You would be taking as much of Take Me to Church as you thought you needed to make that comparison. And you'd be also borrowing from the other guy's song and making the comparison. Your uses in that case don't have to be licensed because you've been taking material that is, you're using it for a new purpose. And the reason why that's okay under copyright, even though this material is under copyright and the copyright holder maintains control of it for most purposes, is that you're making something new in the world. You had something to say, you made a comment, you made a comparison, you added to culture. Wow. Okay, so documentary filmmakers use copyrighted material in their work all the time. And I'll give you an example. I'll show you the book that I wrote, Reclaiming Fair Use. It explains how to use fair use. And the design of this cover is in fact copyrighted, and so is the material in the book, which your camera will capture. But you're not going to have to license it from the University of Chicago Press because you're using it in the context of interviewing me and I'm explaining what I do. So that's a reuse of this material for a different purpose than, say, just reading the book. And nobody is going to be able to read my book on the basis of having seen me do that with it. So before we did this work on copyright and created a code of best practices in fair use for documentarians, the documentary filmmakers were not clear about what was legal. And you can get in a lot of trouble, and very expensive trouble, if you do something wrong under copyright. So they really don't want to get in trouble because they're running small businesses. So they want to have some confidence that they're applying the law correctly. We were able to help them, because of our research, apply the law more correctly, more easily. They saved a lot of money, they made better work, and they made more work because of it. So I think that I got that award because they were grateful for the research that we'd done that made that possible.
That makes sense. What do you find special about the documentary format compared to other movies?
That is a great question. So documentary film is a really interesting genre to me because in it people have made a pledge to the viewer. And what they've said is, we're going to show you something that is something real that happened. And we're not just going to show you what happened. We're going to show you why we think it's important that that happened. And we're going to help explain it to you. We're going to interpret it for you. And usually when people do that, it's because they think there's something that people really need to understand about the world. So what's interesting to me is that I'm really interested in freedom of speech. I'm interested in what makes it possible for people to have expression, what makes it possible for people who don't usually speak to speak, what makes it possible in the sense of the physical infrastructure. In the case of documentary, having cheap, small cameras makes it easier for people to speak with in documentary film. What makes it easier in terms of policy? For instance, fair use is a policy. It's a copyright policy that makes it easier for people to quote material in the world when they're making their documentary. That makes it easier for people to speak. And what makes it easier in terms of training? Are people going to learn what is effective technique? For instance, will they learn the rule of thirds to make it easier for them to make a documentary? And finally, are they given the kind of psychological permission and cultural permission by the society to speak? Do they think that it's appropriate for them to speak? Or are they discouraged from speaking for one of the many reasons why some people are discouraged more than others from speaking in this society? Those are all the things I'm interested in. When I look at documentary film, I see a medium that is more accessible than Hollywood film, than fiction film, and indeed than many other forms that to allow people to speak, and it reaches a lot of people. If you write an essay in a book, it might reach 1/10 of the amount of people that it would reach in a movie, in a documentary film that gets on television, even on local television. So it's a very powerful medium, and it's a medium that's accessible to people who perhaps have not had a voice before. So it's a place where you can see how people speak and what they speak about when they're given a chance to get into the discourse of the mainstream media for the first time. Make sense?
Yeah. What kind of time and resources do you need to create a documentary?
So you can make a documentary with almost no time and resources. You can make a Vine, for instance, 6-second video, and become a worldwide star at this point. And you can make a film that costs $1 million that lasts an hour. So the range of documentary form and the range of access to it is incredibly wide. If you want, however, to get on broadcast, which is where most people will watch video even today, even with YouTube, it's long-form video. It's expensive and it's difficult. And even very well-made documentaries often don't get on broadcast because it's a very tiny window, 24 hours in a day, only so many channels. And most of those channels have very particular definitions of what they want. So it's a very broad question, and if you want to ask a more specific one, I'd be happy to answer that.
So as you said, broadcast is a main channel where documentaries are shown. Besides broadcast, are there any other shows or channels that really can get your documentary out there and have people see it?
That's a great question. So you've seen a lot of new screens and a lot of new venues show up. People have Netflix, they have Hulu, they have Amazon, they have YouTube, they have Vimeo. You can watch on your computer. You can DVR it on your television. You can get access to your streaming services on your television. Basically, you have your two general outlets. You have broadcast, which would be cable and broadcast, coming in over your television set, and then you have material being streamed in one way or another through bits on the internet. What is really interesting is how important broadcast still is, and I'll give you a few statistics on that. 2/3 of people today in the United States will get their television from live TV, and the majority of the other third will get it on a DVR, having watched something that was shown in the last 7 days. So number one, a lot of people watch live TV still, even though the number of people who are streaming their television or streaming their video is large and growing rapidly. It's growing most rapidly with young people. Young people are growing up streaming, and it's growing rapidly as well in upscale socioeconomic demographics and among white people. So that, of course, means that people of color, poorer people, are not adopting as quickly, and older people. So you've definitely got both you've got a race economic skew and you've got an age skew going on in terms of who's watching what. But if you are a documentary filmmaker, there are, and you wanted to reach a broad general public, it's going to be extremely difficult for you to reach them any other way than going through broadcast. First of all, because most people watch it. But second, because to get on a major streaming service, being on broadcast first is really important. In order for your film to end up on Amazon, Hulu, it's not going to end up on Hulu, on Amazon or Netflix, it's going to have to go through what we call an aggregator, somebody who groups together a bunch of products, because Amazon does not want to negotiate individually with you, and neither does Netflix. They want to deal with somebody